Hello everyone and happy autumn! When this video goes up, it is officially September, which means, to me at least, autumn has officially begun. I am even marking the moment with not having a cup of tea. I've actually got a coffee with some cinnamon sprinkled on the top, so I am already embracing the cozy season. Autumn is the perfect time for an atmospheric, cozy, maybe slightly eerie and creepy story. And in this video, I wanted to share with you some of my favourite books that I think are perfect for this time of year, either because they're a little bit creepy or because they have a very autumnal mood to them, or just because they embody that cozy warmth that I think this season is perfect for. So go and grab yourself a comforting, warm drink, get cozy, and let's get straight on with the book recommendations for autumn. So the first book that I have here is a very recent read, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I read this one very recently, and I just feel that it is the epitome of an atmospheric read. It's a gothic tale set in an old Cornish manor house that's supposedly haunted. It's sort of set in the end of summer going into autumn, but the whole book just has a very autumnal mood to it. We follow a nameless narrator who marries a widowed older man called Max de Winters and then goes to live with him in his home. However, this home, which is called Manderley, is supposedly haunted by Rebecca, who is Maxim de Winters' first wife. This book isn't spooky or scary, but it's just got that slight eerie, edge of your seat creepiness to it. There's also a mystery thread throughout the story as well, and lots of characters with grey motives who you don't really know if you should like them or not, which I think is perfect for this time of year, and I would thoroughly recommend this book. I also feel like an autumn book recommendations video can't be done without an Agatha Christie book, and in my last autumn book recommendations video last year, I recommended my favourite Agatha Christie, which is And Then There Were None. So I was trying to rack my brains as to which one to recommend in this video, and I think that the perfect Agatha Christie for this time of year is Crooked House. This story follows a big family who all live together in this huge old mansion, and everything is happy until the head of the family is killed. Everyone suspects his new wife, who is 50 years younger than him. However, there are many suspects amongst the family who might have done it. This is also perfect because it's a standalone book. It's not a Poirot book, it's not part of any series by Agatha Christie. It is a standalone story, perfect for if you liked Knives Out or that sort of thing, where it's family in a creepy old house and there's money involved in the murder. I think this is a perfect whodunit mystery for the autumn. The next book on my list is The Unconsoled by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is maybe the biggest book on this list. It is quite a long story, so if you're looking for something to keep you going for a good few days, then this is perfect. By now you probably know that Ishiguro is my favourite author, and I think all of his books have a sort of mysterious autumnal sort of mood to them. But I wanted to recommend this one because I feel like nobody ever really talks about this book by Ishiguro, and with good reason. It is a weird book, and I think this is definitely one for if you like strange, odd stories that are not very conventional. How to describe this book? It's basically a big, long anxiety dream. This pianist turns up to a hotel in a sort of nondescript European city somewhere, and he is going because he is going to perform at a concert. However, this lead up to the concert involves all these very strange interactions with people from his past and people who just shouldn't have been there. One moment he'll be walking down a hill, and then next thing you know, the hill will now be stairs in his childhood home. It's that kind of twisty turny story that's really hard to follow and keep track of. This is very different to any of Ishiguro's other books, so go into it with that mindset. I would also recommend it for this time of year because of the setting, this European city in the rain. The next book is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, which follows a similar theme of atmospheric and creepy and disorienting. This is, however, a very short book, so if you want the same sort of feel but in a much more condensed form, then I would recommend this one. The story follows a character called Piranesi who lives in this other world, and this other world he just names the house. And in this house there are many caverns, and there is an ocean, and it's really hard to explain. He is the only one that lives there other than one other person who he knows as the other. The plot thickens when another person has entered the house, and the other tells Piranesi that this person is not good and cannot be trusted, which of course piques Piranesi's interest. The setting is like nothing you will have ever read before. This is the most unique book I think I've ever read. The next book that I want to recommend is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and I feel like this time of year is perfect for a Neil Gaiman story. I've actually only read 2 of his stories, The Ocean at the End of the Lane and Neverwhere, but I feel like his books have the perfect kind of creepiness and weirdness for this time of year. In the story we follow a man living in London, and he lives a very ordinary and normal life. However, through a turn of events, he ends up inhabiting another world. He ends up in what is known as the London below, so this world that exists below our world, and kind of everything that is forgotten about ends up in this world. So tube stations that have shut down end up in the London below, or people that get forgotten and that sort of thing. It's very British fantasy in that it's very weird and wacky, but in a kind of intelligent way. There's definitely a message that is trying to be conveyed through the weirdness. But the world has a slight eeriness to it that I think is perfect for this time of year, and I really want to read some other Neil Gaiman books this year. So if you love his stories, please tell me which ones are his best in your opinion. Moving on to the more cozy end of autumn book recommendations, this time of year is perfect for the Anne of Green Gables series. I only actually own the first book in a physical copy, but I've recently started reading Anne of the Island, which is the 3rd book in the series, and that book is the most autumnal one of them all yet, in my opinion. So if you have read Anne of Green Gables but you haven't read any of the other books in the series, I would really recommend carrying on with them, and particularly getting up to the third book. Anne of the Island follows Anne as she is going to university, and so leaving home, leaving Avonlea for the first time since she moved there, and leaving behind some of her friends. However, some of her school friends are also going to the same university, so there is a little bit of continuation on in the characters. This book has so many beautiful descriptions of autumn, even though it kind of follows a lot of seasons. I think it goes through a whole school year, but it feels autumnal. I think because it's that start of the school year type feel to it. It also has a bit more of an emotional tone than some of the other books in the series so far. And there is also a beautiful budding romance. So yes, I would really recommend carrying on with the series. And if you haven't started it already, even the first book is just perfect for this time of year. Ellen Montgomery is second to none when it comes to seasons and describing the weather and nature. She just does it so beautifully. We have one that kind of fits in the cozy and serious category, and that is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Sujimura. This story follows a young girl called Kokoro, and she is currently not going to school. Something has happened to her at school and it's caused her to not want to go. One day she is at home whilst her parents are out, and her mirror in her bedroom starts to mysteriously glow. She reaches out to touch it and ends up being transported through the mirror to this massive castle. When she gets to the castle, she meets a little girl in a wolf mask who tells her basically that she's been chosen to be part of this castle for the next academic year, and there are time frames where she's allowed to be there and all these rules. But at the same time, while she's there, she can hunt for this magical key, and if she finds this magical key, she can have a wish granted. However, if she breaks any of the rules in the castle while she's there for the year, everyone will be eaten by the wolf. This story was so heartwarming to me. It's more on the serious side in that it touches on some pretty deep and emotional topics, particularly around bullying and friendships and just that sense of not really knowing what other people are going through behind the surface. A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross is a very cozy and lyrical and atmospheric fantasy story. The story follows a bard who is teaching at a university on the mainland. However, he is summoned home to his clan, who live in this sort of mysterious Scottish-inspired island that nobody likes to cross the sea to because there are all these sea spirits in the sea that block people from going there. A lot of the story is set in cottages with the roaring fire on, and it just feels very warm and cozy to read. In my opinion, this time of year is also perfect for more traditional style fantasy, and I guess by that I mean fantasy that centres on an adventure or a quest, with sword fights and princesses and castles and that sort of thing. And I think a book that is perfect for that is The Princess Bride by William Goldman. If you haven't already encountered this story, then I would so recommend that you do. The story follows Wesley, who is a farm boy, and Buttercup, who I believe lives on the land that he is a farm boy for. And he falls in love with Buttercup but needs to go and make a fortune in order to support her financially. So he travels off to make his fortune, but ends up getting caught by a pirate, and this pirate in particular is known for taking no survivors. So it's pretty much assumed that he's dead. Fast forward to the present, and Buttercup is now engaged to be married to Prince Humperdinck, who is not a very nice guy, but Buttercup is just distraught and devastated by the loss of her true love. However, Buttercup is kidnapped by a mysterious man in black, and so begins an adventure story, and it's just so funny and witty but wonderful at the same time. Also, if you haven't watched the film, that is just one of my favourite comfort movies, and I think this book is kind of the same. If you want something to feel like a comfort story, then I would recommend this one. And the final book that I want to recommend in this video is a young adult fantasy standalone story, which is An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. This story follows Isabel, who is a painter. In her land, the humans and the fae live fairly harmoniously. However, the fae folk have actually been cursed. So the fae can't actually do any human craft. So they can't bake or cook or write or paint. And so a lot of Isabel's paintings end up being for the fae, but everything changes when one day she needs to paint a portrait for the autumn prince of the fae. When she paints him, she ends up painting sorrow into his expression because that's what she sees. However, it turns out that it is an offensive crime to paint emotion into the fae's face. So she ends up being whisked away to the fairy court to stand trial for her crime. This book is predominantly set in the autumn, like an autumnal world, a world that is eternally autumn, with the royal family of this autumnal land. And so I feel like you can't really get much more autumnal than that. There's lots of kind of traveling through enchanted woodlands, and there's a romance, and I remember enjoying this one quite a lot. So those are all of the books that I wanted to recommend in this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Please let me know in the comments what your favourite autumnal books are. Please give me your autumnal book recommendations, because next week I am going book shopping and I really want to get some good books for the autumn. So please send me your recommendations so that I can find some new books to read. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have an amazing day and an amazing start to the best season of the year, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.